Okay, let's step back for a moment. Picture this. A city just buzzing with life, truly vibrant, the powerful heart of the known world back then.
You mean Constantinople?
Exactly. Constantinople, a place so grand, so wealthy, so vital. It just pulled people in from all over Europe. Ambitious people looking for something more.
Yeah, it really was the city, Miklagard, the great city, as many from the north actually called it. And among those drawn there, these elite warriors, guys willing to travel huge distances to serve the ruler.
The emperor, known to many of them as the King of the Greeks.
Right.
Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This is brought to you, our listener, and it's hosted on the Archon YouTube channel.
And today, our mission, so to speak, is to really dive into the history surrounding these warriors, the Varangians.
We want to explore where they came from, what life was really like for them in this, well, amazing capital city, and what the history from this period tells us about their service to the emperor.
We're basically your guides today. We're going through the historical accounts, trying to pull out the, surprising details, the key insights about these warriors and the empire they served.
And what we're looking at today really underlines the dynamism of the Greek world then. Centered on Constantinople, it was just this magnet for talent and ambition.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Who exactly were these Varangians when they first kind of pop up in the historical record? Where did they originate?
Well, the early accounts, they point towards the Norse states, the ones developing in what we now call Russia.
Right.
Think of figures like Rurik, Novgorod around 862 maybe, and these big centers that emerged, like Novgorod, like Kiev. These Norse-ruled places along the big rivers did set up trade routes, sure, but also networks for warriors.
So Norsemen, essentially Vikings, using those rivers to head south. And that brought them into contact with the Byzantines pretty early on.
Oh, definitely. The records show interactions, even treaties, well before they were like a formal guard unit. There's a big one from 907, a treaty between Emperor Leo VI and Russia's leader Oleg. It set out terms for trade, how these northern guys should behave when they were in imperial lands, that sort of thing.
But the history from the period, it seems to make a distinction, doesn't it, between the Slavonic people, often called Rus, and the guys specifically called Varangians.
Yes, that's a really important point that kind of develops over time in the Byzantine writing. Rosas was used pretty broadly at first, but gradually the Byzantines started to separate out the Slavonic peoples from those who were primarily, Scandinavian, the Norsemen.
Okay.
And later on, that group, the Varangians, it would expand, came to include others, English, Scots, notably. But that initial core, definitely Scandinavian.
And what was it about them? Why did the empire want them specifically?
It boils down to their reputation. They're seen as incredibly effective, fierce warriors. Reports mention their skill in battle, their courage, how reliable they were. They were already serving as mercenaries here and there. And this reputation, well, it put them squarely on the Byzantine radar. An empire always needed good, dependable fighters.
So they go from being, I don't know, maybe tricky visitors or freelancers to being really woven into the empire's military structure. How did that shift happen? How'd they become elite?
Well, initially they served in existing foreign units. The Byzantine army had a long tradition, going back to Rome really, of using non-citizen soldiers. These units were often grouped together, sometimes called the hetairai.
Right, the companionships.
Exactly. But then there was this specific moment, a real turning point that made them something special. Under Emperor Basil II.
Ah, Basil II. That sounds significant.
It really was. The history clearly points to his reign. He was facing a big internal challenge, a rebellion, and he got this large group of Russes, or Varangian warriors, maybe 6,000 men, one account says. It was part of a deal, actually, involving his marriage to a Russ's princess.
Wow, 6,000 warriors.
Yeah. And Basil used them really effectively. He saw their value, their loyalty, and he established the Varangian regiment, a distinct, dedicated force. They became the emperor's personal lifeguards, right there in the palace.
That's a huge jump. From being part of a mixed foreign unit to the emperor's personal guard. What was the big appeal for these guys? Why make that incredibly long journey?
The accounts from the time are pretty clear about it. It wasn't just about fighting. It was the potential for, and these are sort of the terms used, good honors, great dignity, and maybe the biggest draw for ambitious guys, enormous wealth.
Right, money and status.
Exactly. Serving the Emperor's Guard in Constantinople, their Miklagard, it offered chances for getting ahead, for making serious money that were just, well, unimaginable back home for a lot of them.
That makes perfect sense when you consider Constantinople's place in the world then.
Precisely. The history portrays it as the absolute peak, a huge international center. Culture, power, wealth, unmatched in Europe at the time. Its reputation alone was a massive draw.
So serving the emperor, the king of the Greeks, wasn't just mercenary work.
No, not really. It was seen as an honor, a pathway to real status, real fortune, on what was basically the world stage of that era.
Okay, let's shift to their life there. Once they're actually in Constantinople, serving, what do we know about their day-to-day?
We get glimpses, from different accounts. They had their own area, a sanctuary and place to live, often mentioned as being near the monastery of St. Mamos. They even had a specific harbor nearby for their ships.
So like a community base within the city?
Kinda, yeah. Gave them some familiarity maybe, while still being part of the city's fabric.
And the wealth you mentioned, how did they actually earn it? Was it just a salary?
It was several things. A big part was their cut of the loot from campaigns. And the accounts suggest they got a pretty hefty share. Like after Basil II won at the Battle of Longan, they reportedly got a third of the booty, which is huge.
A third? Wow.
Yeah. And then there was regular pay. And the rates for the elite inner guard, which they definitely were, seemed to have been really high. One report suggests something like 40 gold numismata a month for those serving within the city. Maybe less for those out campaigning without the city.
40 gold coins a month. That sounds like serious money back then.
Oh, it was. Especially considering what you could buy or save or send home. And then there's this really interesting and much debated concept mentioned in some accounts. Paludisvarf.
Paludisvarf. Okay, what's the deal with that? What are the theories?
Well, the word itself is tricky, and how people interpret it has varied a lot. Some accounts suggest it might just be another word for their share of plunder, booty.
Okay.
Then there's a more dramatic idea, though most historians doubt this one, that it was some kind of controversial rite to basically loot the emperor's palace when he died.
Really? That seems unlikely for the Byzantines.
Highly unlikely, yeah. Doesn't fit with the structured Byzantine state at all. A third possibility, especially given their links to Russia, is that it involved expeditions, maybe tax-gathering trips up in Russ's territory, and the Varangians got a share of whatever was collected.
Ah, okay.
As history admits, it's hard to translate precisely, but it explores these ideas. It shows Paludisvarf was definitely a known, if maybe unusual, source of income for them.
So, multiple ways to get rich. Beyond money, what were their actual duties as the emperor's guard?
Their jobs were vital and very public, really emphasized their elite status. Accounts tell us they guarded right outside the emperor's private office, his Kellyan, where all the sensitive stuff happened, and also his main reception room, the Triclinian.
So the last line of defense.
Pretty much. The most trusted guys right around the emperor. They also had a big ceremonial role. They'd be in state processions, marching with the emperor to church, and always, very distinctively, carrying those big axes on their shoulders.
Ah, yes, the axes. That's the iconic image, isn't it? A Varangian with his axe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Became part of their whole identity, their fearsome image. We also get hints about their religious life. Given their origins, Norse mostly at first, then English, Christianity was important. For the Norse guys, St. Olaf seems to have been a big deal, a key patron saint.
Okay.
Accounts mention older churches they used, like one for the Virgin Mary, called the Panhagia Varangiatissa, and there are hints of maybe chapels or even churches dedicated to St. Olaf too, perhaps linked to vows made in battle, which we can talk about later.
And isn't there that striking story about St. Olaf's sword, Knightr?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating bit from one account. It comes from Eindri Eidi the Young, a Norwegian nobleman who rose high in the Varangian Guard. He claimed he saw what was said to be St. Olaf's sword, Knightr, kept over an altar in Constantinople.
Wow.
It really reinforces that tangible link, doesn't it? Between their faith, their homeland, and their service, way down in the Greek capital.
Let's talk about how they looked, and maybe more importantly, how they fought, according to people who actually saw them.
Michael Psellus, the Byzantine historian, he was an eyewitness. He gives us a really vivid description. He actually contrasted them with, say, the Normans.
Oh, interesting. How so?
He noted the Varangians were typically blue-eyed, natural complexions, no face paint, unlike the Normans, who he said sometimes painted their faces or plucked their eyebrows.
Okay.
But it's his description of their fighting that really jumps out. Psellus said they fought like madmen, seemed totally indifferent to getting wounded, just incredibly tenacious.
Wow.
Their key weapons were those long spears and, of course, the famous single-edged axes they carried on their shoulders. And they were masters of the shield wall. Psellus calls it an impenetrable defense.
So not flashy fighters, but incredibly tough and effective.
Exactly. Psellus observed that Normans might be quick at first, but they tired out. The Varangians, maybe a bit slower to start, were just relentless. They didn't hold back, fought with this almost terrifying disregard for their own safety. That shield wall was a serious force on the battlefield. It's a great first-hand account.
Now, when we think about individual Varangians who really made a name for themselves, there's one guy who towers above the rest in the history, isn't there? Harald Sigurdarson.
Oh, without a doubt. Haraldr, who later went back to Norway and became King Harald III, Hardrada. He's probably the single best-known person linked to the Varangian Guard.
Yeah.
His time in the East is just an incredible story. It really shows the opportunities.
How did he even get to Byzantium in the first place?
Well, after the Battle of Stiklestad in 1030, that's where his half-brother, St. Olaf, was killed. Haraldr was wounded and had to flee into exile.
Right.
He spent some time first serving in Russia under Prince Jaroslav in Kiev, held military posts there, apparently. Then he made his way down to Constantinople around 1034, entered the service of Emperor Michael IV, and then his successors.
What sort of ranks did he reach? Was he just a regular soldier?
No. The records suggest he rose pretty high pretty quickly. Held titles like Manglavites, that's a high-ranking palace guard, often involved in ceremonies too, and later Spathiocandidatos. That's a significant military or admin rank, often linked to staff jobs or command.
So he wasn't just some foot soldier, he was moving up.
Definitely. It shows a foreigner could really climb the ladder in the Byzantine system back then.
And he fought in major campaigns mentioned in the history?
Yes, very much so. He served down in Sicily under the famous General Georgios Maniasis, and later in Bulgaria, where accounts suggest his actions were pretty crucial in helping the emperor put down a revolt and restore control.
And the history says he got enormous wealth during this time.
It does, explicitly. His wealth is tied directly to his service. His big share of the loot from campaigns like Sicily, his high pay as a ranking Varangian, and probably benefiting from other things too, like maybe that Paludisvarf, whatever it was exactly. The accounts are clear.
He became seriously rich. Now, there are some really wild stories about him in the sagas, maybe building on real events, like capturing a city using birds.
Ah, yes, that one pops up in some later accounts about Haraldr.
Yeah.
The story goes he attached flammable stuff to birds, maybe nests or their backs, to set fire to a city's roofs from the inside. Dramatic stuff.
Sounds like something out of a legend.
Exactly, and it's worth noting, as historical analysis points out, that specific story, it's kind of a traveling tale. It shows up linked to other figures too, like Queen Olga of Kiev, even Alexander the Great sometimes.
Ah, okay.
So it might be more of a legendary add-on to Harold's story rather than something unique he actually did. But it's definitely part of his legend.
What about his relationship with that general Georgios Maniensis? Any friction there?
Accounts do suggest tension. Maniensis was known to be brilliant, but also famously harsh, demanding. Maybe clashed with the independent streak of the Varangians or Haraldr himself.
I see.
There are stories, maybe exaggerated in the sagas, but likely based on something real, about disagreements, over discipline, tactics, maybe perceived insults, leading to bad blood between them.
And then there's his dramatic escape from prison in Constantinople.
Oh, yeah, that's one of the most exciting parts. He ended up imprisoned, maybe got caught up in the crazy court politics, maybe accused of hiding treasure, who knows. His escape is legendary.
And wasn't he involved in deposing an emperor?
Yes. Historical reports describe his role vividly in kicking out Emperor Michael V in 1042. It's even said his men carried out summary executions of other Varangians who'd sided with the deposed emperor.
Wow, executing their own guys.
Some suggest that might have even happened under the Varangian regiment's own internal disciplinary rules. Shows how much power they wielded at that moment.
So how did he finally get out of Constantinople and head home?
Well, the accounts tell of a pretty daring escape. To get his ships out of the harbor, past those huge iron chains they stretched across the Golden Horn to block passage.
Right, the harbor chain.
Haraldr supposedly had his men shift their weight in the galleys, all together, making the boats ride up high enough to scrape over or maybe lift over the chains.
Clever.
Present it as a very bold move. And it worked. Allowed him to leave.
He eventually gets back to Norway, becomes king. Did he just forget about Byzantium then?
Interestingly, no. The record suggests that even as king, Haraldr kept up a relationship, described as a friendship, with the Byzantine emperors. And there's this intriguing observation that later, when he was involved in setting up bishops back in Norway, his actions might show a lasting Byzantine influence, like he'd picked up some Byzantine training and sympathy that he brought back north.
Harold's story really is the perfect example, isn't it, of how high an ambitious European could climb by serving the emperor, the king of the Greeks. It wasn't just a paycheck, it was a path to becoming famous across the known world.
Absolutely. His life is often cited just for that reason. Shows the level of honor, position, wealth a foreigner could get in the imperial system, pulled in by the sheer prestige and opportunity of Constantinople.
Beyond Haraldr, are there other stories, maybe smaller anecdotes in the history, that give us more insight into the Varangian experience or how their unit worked internally?
Yeah, definitely. There are several accounts that shine a light on their laws, their customs, like the story of Horstein Vigerstursen and Gestur Bjarnason wrestling in Byzantium.
Wrestling? What happened?
Well, it highlights this Varangian law against trying to kill another member. During a game, Horstein apparently attacked Gestur seriously. The other Varangians, following their own code, wanted to execute Horstein right then and there.
Whoa.
Gestur actually had to step in, plead for Horstein's life, and offer a massive ransom, half his own property, which they accepted. It really shows they had strong internal discipline, but also this system for mediation and paying compensation within the regiment.
So they had their own sort of legal system running alongside the Byzantine one. What about that story with Thorbjorn Ungel and Thorstein Dromundr and Grettir Sax?
That one's fascinating too, because it shows this clash between traditional Norse ideas, like the blood feud, and the Varangian law operating in Byzantium.
How so?
According to the account, Horstein killed Thorbjorn using this famous short sword, Grettir Sax, during an arms parade. It was revenge for his brother. Now, Varangian law at the time apparently demanded the death penalty for killing.
Okay.
But after hearing Horstein explain his actions, invoking the Norse code of blood feud, the Varangians, acting as judges for their own guy, actually changed the sentence, commuted it to a really hefty fine instead of death.
So they were flexible, they balanced their own rules with their members' cultural background.
It suggests that, yeah,
Yeah.
a degree of cultural negotiation. They respected Byzantine expectations, but also acknowledged their own Norse heritage within their system.
And you mentioned Bolig Bolison returning home rich.
Yes, the accounts of Bolig Bolison coming back from Byzantium describe him arriving in great magnificence. Now, sagas might embellish things, sure, but historians see the basic fact: him returning wealthy and with higher status as solid evidence of the kind of fortune you could make serving in the Guard.
We also briefly mentioned Eindri the Young earlier.
Right, Eindri the Young, identified in the accounts as a high-ranking Norwegian nobleman. He served as a commander in the emperor's service. Some scholars even think, based on hints of the records, that he might have been sent back to Scandinavia on recruiting missions, basically acting as an envoy for the emperor, looking for more guys for the Guard.
These individual stories really paint a picture, don't they? This mix of Norse background, Byzantine opportunity, and their unique place within the empire. Let's look at their impact in battle now. That was their main job, after all.
Exactly, and the historical records highlight their crucial role in several key fights. We already mentioned Basil II's victory at Longin, where that huge share of loot they got clearly points to how important they were in the battle.
And their role in deposing Michael V.
Yes, back in 1042, that shows their political weight too, their decisive military muscle right there in the capital.
But maybe the best example of them in action, militarily, from the history, is the Battle of Barrow, under John II Ticonas.
Oh, absolutely. Barrow against the Pechenegs. It's described really vividly. The Varangians were totally crucial, fought in that classic disciplined shield wall formation.
Right.
When other imperial troops were struggling to break the Pechenegs' wagon fort, these rings of wagons used as mobile defenses.
Like a fortress on wheels.
Exactly. It was the Varangians, with their axes and their shield wall, who led the final charge.
Yeah.
Smashed through the enemy defenses, basically won the battle for the Byzantines.
And wasn't there that striking story about their commander making a vow during that battle?
Yes. The account says their commander, a guy named Schorr Helsinger, vowed that if they won, he'd build a church to St. Olaf back in Constantinople. It just beautifully links their military success right back to their faith, their identity. Shows that whole blend of cultures and loyalties perfectly. It's a really powerful example of how effective they were, their devotion, and just how distinct they were within the imperial army.
We should probably also mention that the Guard's makeup changed over time, didn't it?
It did, yeah. That initial core under Basil II. Mostly Norse, but later accounts show lots of Englishmen and Scots joining. Especially after 1066, the Norman conquest of England, a lot of Anglo-Saxon warriors apparently looked for service abroad then.
So it became more diverse.
Definitely. By the time of the Nicene Empire, that's after the Fourth Crusade, messed everything up. The unit was sometimes even called the Celtae Pelecaphoroi, the axe-bearing Celts, reflecting all the guys from the British Isles. And they kept doing those vital guard duties right up until the very end of the empire.
We've talked a lot about why individuals came. Let's loop back to that main theme. Just how powerful the pull of the King of the Greeks in Constantinople itself really was.
Yeah, the history really hammers this home. Constantinople wasn't just another city. It was this incredibly dynamic center. Culture, power, international influence. Like nowhere else. It wasn't just a place to fight or trade. The imperial court itself was a destination, a symbol of prestige.
And the accounts even mention visits from European kings, right?
Yes, exactly. We hear about figures like King Erik I of Denmark, King Sigurd I of Norway visiting the imperial court. And the records describe these really elaborate honors, grand receptions they got, put up in imperial palaces, given lavish gifts.
Must have been impressive.
It even notes the emperor really admired King Erik, apparently had full-size portraits of him painted.
Getting your portrait painted by the emperor in Constantinople, imagine taking news of that back home. That's the ultimate status symbol.
It speaks volumes, doesn't it? About the prestige of the court, the emperor himself. The history makes it crystal clear. For ambitious, dynamic Europeans, serving the Byzantine emperor, the king of the Greeks, it was seen as a huge honor. It offered unmatched opportunities, fortune, status, experience on this global stage.
A chance to be right at the heart of things.
Exactly. At the center of what they considered the civilized world. Offering rewards, perspectives, just way beyond anything they could find back home.
So, thinking back over our deep dive into the history here, we see these Varangians really transform. From these foreign warriors arriving down the rivers to becoming the emperor's absolutely loyal elite lifeguards. A force known for being tough, for their axes, their internal rules, deeply part of the empire, yet somehow still distinct.
That sums it up well. Their story is just woven right into the Byzantine Empire during this whole period. It highlights how dynamic the empire was, how it could attract and use talent from all over the known world, and just the enduring appeal of Constantinople as this global center.
It's really fascinating to think how this mixed Norse, English, Scottish, Byzantine cultures, all these warriors from far away, how that shaped not just Byzantium, but also the stories and the ambitions of the guys who went back home, bringing wealth, sure, but also tales, maybe new ideas too.
Indeed, they were like living connections between really different worlds.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe chew on. We know about the military stuff, the money. But considering how far they traveled, how deeply integrated they became, in what other ways, maybe less obvious ways, might the Varangians have helped ideas or art or even social customs travel between the Byzantine Empire and those distant lands like Scandinavia and Britain? Are there connections there we're only just starting to really understand?